Morning.
Thanks for coming on. How are you feeling about the players that Mikel Arteta is trying to bring in? And is he right that talent costs money, and if Arsenal want to succeed, they need to splash the cash?
Yes, he is. Of course he is. And I think that what came up short last year, I don't think was a lack of ability. It was a lack of strength and depth in the squad and not quite a winning mentality, the one that's required to get over the line and win big trophies. So I'm looking for us to sign players that have that mentality coupled with a great talent. But we've also got to get a squad like City where you can choose from a regular first team pool of at least 16 players. Because if you don't, you're in the Champions League, then we could face a very difficult season.
Piers, you just mentioned it briefly there. I think in the past, if I look back the last few years exception, Arsenal have been ripped off in the transfer market, signing players who were talented but weren't playing for the shirt. And I think now he's cleared the decks, he's on the right track, and now it's really important the signings he does make have got to have the right character.
Yeah, and I think that's why Declan Rice is absolutely key, because Declan Rice to me is not just a top player, but he has what I call a kind of Tony Adams mentality. You know, he looks to me like a midfield version of Adams and could bring that kind of leadership to the Arsenal team. And I think that's why he ticks every box for me, Rice. He's just got that right attitude coupled with the great ability. I'm not as convinced by Havertz, and I'm slightly concerned that we're going to lose Xhaka and potentially Partey. And I'm like, well, hang on, how does this help the squad depth? So I think there's a lot of activity going on here, and I'm not completely convinced by some of it. I'm completely convinced we've got to get Declan Rice. I'm not as convinced by Havertz, and I'm interested to see how that plays out. Arteta clearly really rates him and thinks he can mould him and make him the player he believes he can be. But if you lose Partey and Xhaka from our midfield and you only bring in Rice and maybe one other, how does that improve your strength in depth? So there are some big question marks at the moment.
And that's been one of the big issues, actually, wasn't it, last season when you talk about strength in depth? Because one of the things that I think maybe Mikel Arteta probably came in for criticism for was he didn't rotate his squad as much as maybe he should have done in the Europa League. Ended up playing Bukayo Saka in every single one of those Europa League games when it wasn't always necessary to do so. So adding a little bit more to the squad in terms of numbers. Obviously, Trossard came in the second half of the season. That gives them a little bit of extra depth. If they do sign a younger player like Lavia, Jurrien Timber to bolster the defence as well. He can play centre-back or right-back. You've still got Tomiyasu. If Tierney goes, do you think they need a full-back as well, a left-back?
I don't know about that. I mean, I think that I actually think what we need is a world-class striker. I've got to be honest. I think that we need a proper 25, 30 goals a year striker. I don't think Gabriel Jesus is ever going to be that guy. I think he's a brilliant player and his heat map is incredible and he's a fantastic team player. But I'm just not convinced that we have a proper out-and-out centre forward of the type that I think you need. Look at City when they went and got Haaland. I mean, they just took them to a whole new level. And obviously there aren't many Haalands to the pound out there. I get that. But there are players, I would be breaking the bank for Osimhen from Napoli, for example, someone like that. But I don't see us being linked at the moment with anybody of that stature to lead our line. And I'm not convinced that if we're going to really perform in the Champions League and threaten to win the Premier League, that you can do that without a top world-class striker being brought to the party. And I don't think Kai Havertz is that guy.
Piers, I remember John Toshak, who was Real Madrid manager, really clever man, said to me when I first started out coaching, you can be the best tactician in the world, you can be the best motivator in the world, you can be the best man manager in the world, you've got to pay for goals.
Yes.
So he was saying to me, you got to pay money out for strikers. You can't teach them how to get on the end of crosses and things. You can tell them where to run, but their instinct is what you're paying for.
Which is why you were a club record fee.
Yeah, you know that better than anybody. And I think that's completely true. And I just don't think you can win major trophies anymore if you don't have a player like that who's going to get you 25, 30 a season. Arsenal fans laughed at me last year when I suggested that Cristiano Ronaldo would be a great signing for the rest of the season when he left United. Are they laughing now? Do we not honestly think someone like Ronaldo in that run-in when Jesus got injured, that Ronaldo couldn't have led our line and perhaps got us over the line? Not just because of the goals, but because of the winning mentality. And, you put someone like that into the dressing room, all the young players will gravitate to that mentality. And it just looked to me like, looking back on the season, I like the rhetoric coming from Arteta about how painful it's been. I like it from Odegaard as well, the captain, saying how painful it's been. And that's great, and I'm sure we'll learn from the pain. But let's be under no illusion here. We choked the title. We had it. It was ours to lose, and we choked it. And that is a mentality thing.
Okay, well, it's on mentality. Mikel Arteta has said that the Arsenal's soul as a club had been lost before he took charge in 2019. He was speaking to Marca and he said, "Now I feel happy. We've a clear identity. There's a union and we are full of energy. That's the biggest thing. From top to bottom, we all push in the same direction. I was Pep's assistant at City. We played Arsenal. And I saw that the soul of the club had been lost. And that was the moment in which he decided to go and help them out." Do you agree with him?
I completely agree, and I think that great credit to Arteta for coming through 2 difficult years where sceptics, including me, were not really convinced by him. We thought we had a rookie coach, a bit out of his depth, not in the same league as his former master Pep, and all that kind of stuff. And I think that last season was an extraordinary move forward.
Do you think fans who doubted
club.
him regret that now? Do you regret that now, doubting him?
No, I think it's a silly sort of thing to look back on real-time emotions. If you look at it, I mean, in his first 2 full seasons, Arteta lost 13 league matches in both seasons. There aren't many Arsenal managers in the last few decades who would have survived that. So I think that Arsenal fans were right to be sceptical. The way we choked the top 4 last season, the season before this one, was not good. And you saw that in the Amazon series. And what you saw also in the Amazon series was how Arteta turned around the mentality of his team and brought the fans with him. And he turned me round. By the time I finished watching that series, I'd come round to being all in on Arteta, and I still am. I think Arteta is the right guy, and he's turned around the attitude. And he's definitely got, as he says, he's got that fusion back between the fans and the players, which is incredibly important. But it cannot detract, I think, from the fact that, or you can't get away from the fact that we should have won the league. And the question for Arteta is, why didn't we? And what do we need to win us the league next season against what is going to be ferocious competition? I mean, there are going to be so many teams who are going to be so much stronger than they were last season. Liverpool, Chelsea, City themselves, Newcastle, Manchester United. You can bet your life it's going to be a frenzied bloodbath in the transfer window. And Arsenal, if we're not careful, we could find ourselves struggling to even make top 4. Or if we buy well and we get Declan Rice over the line, and in my opinion, if we go and get a world-class striker as well, and we bolster the defence, and we make sure that if Saliba gets injured again, he, by the way, has been a brilliant signing in terms of the new contract, because he is world-class. And when he was playing in the Europa, which he shouldn't have been playing in, to go back to your point, we really missed him, and that probably helped facilitate us losing the league. But if we get those key planks in place, then I think we can be competitive. But if we don't, it could be a very tough season.
And listen, I'm with you. I watched that Amazon documentary, and I went from being a skeptic of Arteta to believing in the way that he carried himself, in the way that he was so driven. You could see the effort that he went into. And having spoken to him on a number of occasions, he's just got something about him that makes you, that pulls you along with him when you get close to him, when you get into his sort of his mindset. But he's also absolutely right about this Premier League. Like you've said, it's going to be a bloodbath. It's going to be people scrapping for points to get into the top 4 in the European places. And in order to do that, he has actually, by saying what he said this weekend, put a bit of pressure on the board, saying if we want to be competitive, you've got to spend. You've got to do what you've just said. You've got to take us to the next level, because if you don't, you're going to throw away a great opportunity. So that the onus is on the board now.
No question. And look, I think what's encouraging, if you look at the Kroenke family and the success they've had with their other franchises in America, they've been pretty much winning everything in every sport. So the Kroenkes are on a roll, and I think they've got a taste of glory in America. And from what I hear, and this is just people who know them, they are determined to try and win not just the Premier League, but the Champions League. And of course, they've got buckets of cash, these guys. I mean, we talk about, Arsenal fans often say, we haven't got the money of, Manchester City stuff. It's complete balderdash. Stan Kroenke's one of the wealthiest people in America, and his wife is the Walmart supermarket heiress, who's worth even more. She could buy a top striker with a petty change each week. So I think we've got to get away from this slightly inferior mentality we have about our spending power. If the Kroenkes want to win the big trophies in the way that they're telling people they do, if they want to make Arsenal the next part of their global sporting franchise, which is a really serious winner, they've got to spend big. And I just feel if we don't sign a world-class striker, then I fear we're going to be in the same position again next season.
Did you watch Glastonbury last night? What do you think of Elton John?
Well, I was more interested in what happened to Laura Woods because has she pulled an out in Brazil? What's been going on here?
I think she has, Piers. She's gone into a different level where she can just.
Last I see, Laura Woods is on the lash in Glastonbury. And next thing I discover, no offence to you two, but I was looking forward to a nice little chat with Laura this morning. I discovered she's not there.
Sorry to disappoint you. I think she just got pulled into the Elton John thing, couldn't get out, and transport issues. We're hearing transport issues.
Well, all I was going to say, actually, and we can say it in her absence, but I know it's her last week, isn't it, at talkSPORT?
It is,
She's been absolutely brilliant on the breakfast show. So, Laura, in your absence, what I was going to say is thank you for all the brilliant stuff you've done for the last 3. It's been a pleasure to be on occasionally with you and to listen to you. And I wish you all the very best in your next exciting venture. And as for Elton John, well, I think it was a pretty good show. I mean, he's a showman. And he put on one hell of a show, no question. Although I was quite amused to see him having to read the lyrics to every one of his songs. I guess that's what happens when you get past a certain age. Although I was mocking this on Twitter, and someone mate, no disrespect, but you've been reading an autocue for 30 years.
Fair dues. Have you ever done in Glastonbury?
I literally, hell would have to freeze over before you got me in a tent with those grimy, stinking hellhole of a crowd. But I do get why people like it. And I've got a few of my sons have been down there and say it's fantastic. But no, I'm very much a 5-star hotel guy, not a cheap little tent, I'm afraid.
I thought it was just me.
Listen, show's back on tonight, is it?
It's back on tonight. Obviously, a lot of news around the weekend with what's happening with Russia and Vladimir Putin, and obviously continued fallout from an extraordinary situation with that submersible which went down at the wreck of the Titanic. So lots of news around, and we'll be on it again tonight, 8 o'clock, lads.
Looking forward to it. Mother-in-law Mary is a massive Piers Morgan fan, and she is TalkTV's #1 customer.
Who is?
My mother-in-law, Mary. She is.
Please wish her my very best. Obviously, a woman of impeccable taste.
You know, I played centre forward with Piers.
Did you?
At Filbert Street. Remember Piers?
Yes.
Charity match.
It was a charity match.
When he wouldn't pass to me.
Well, listen, mate, I've always been a selfish striker, and that's exactly what we need right now. But that was just to remind people, I've actually been a player manager twice. Once in that charity game against Niall Horan's team, I think it was.
Yeah.
And then I was also Soccer Aid, and I'm basically 2 for 2. I'm the most successful player manager in the history of world football.
Just resign now.
When people say to me, "What the hell do you know about football, Piers?" I'm like, I know that. I've managed teams with some of the best players in the world. When I won Soccer Aid, I gave a team talk. Harry Redknapp was my #2. Let me do the team talk in the dressing room. I stared at a group of people: Roberto Carlos, Robert Pires, Didier Drogba, Usain Bolt. They're all there, and they hung on my every word as I delivered a literal Churchillian speech, including quotes from Winston Churchill. And at the end, and it's all on video, at the end they all stood and roared. And it was that mentality that Arsenal need right now. A bit of Churchill and a top striker. And off we go, boys.
See, if only you'd given the team talk ahead of that Man City game, it would have been absolutely delighted.
It would have been completely different.
Cheers. Piers, back on telly tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. Big Arsenal fan and TalkTV host. This is TalkSPORT Breakfast.
TalkSPORT Breakfast, waking you up Monday to Friday morning from 6 a.m. on AM, on DAB, via the TalkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. TalkSPORT.